Hey pre-calculus students, today we talked about finding domain of a function if we are just given the function and not given the graph. So for this one, for this example, I'm going to use number 43 from the homework for 1.1. And so I'm going to take a look. We've got f of a equals 5a over the square root of 4a minus 1. So domain is the x values, but in this case it's the a values. It's whatever you're plugging into your function, that's your domain. So we want to figure out if there are any values that we cannot have for a. So looking at the function itself, we notice two things. First, we notice it has a denominator, and we know denominators cannot be 0. And then the second thing we might notice is that there is a square root in the denominator, or a square root anywhere, because we know that we can't have negative values in a square root. So those are the two things that we're looking out for here. Zeros for denominators, and then negative values for a square root. Okay, so keeping that in mind, I'm going to start by setting 4a minus 1 equal to 0, because I know the square root of 0 is 0, and we don't want that in our denominator. So 4a minus 1 equals 0. So adding 1, dividing by 4, we get a is 1/4. So we know a cannot be 1/4. We can't have 1/4 in our domain. So that takes care of the having a 0 in the denominator part of things. Now we need to take care of not having a negative square root, because we don't want that either. So luckily we've already set it equal to 0 and figured out what's kind of the divider between positives and negative values in there. Now all we have to do is test a couple of values to see what makes it positive and what makes it negative. So I'm going to take a value on either side of 1/4. I'm going to go with 0 because 0 is less than 1/4, and then 1 because 1 is greater than 1/4. Those are easy values to test. So I'm going to plug in 0 into the square root of 4 times a minus 1, so 4 times 0 minus 1. And we get the square root of negative 1, which we don't want. And then plugging in 1, we get 4 times 1 minus 1, which is the square root of 3, which is okay. So this tells me that I don't want values that are less than 1/4 in my domain, because they will make it a negative value. But values that are greater than 1/4 are okay. So when I go to make my interval notation, I want to have parentheses here, not a bracket, because I don't want to include 1/4. And then any value from 1/4 up to infinity is okay. All right, so there's my domain for f of a for number 43. I could also write this using set builder notation. So to practice our set builder notation, let's do that really quick. Usually you start with, in set builder, x and then that bar for such that. In this case, since it's f of a, I'm going to go with a, because we want values for a such that a is greater than 1/4. And then also that a is in the set of real numbers. So this would be our set builder notation for this exact same interval here. All right. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to stop by and ask. Have a good day.